Oh, it's all well aligned now.
Perfectly. Well, perpendicular to each other, on the
Did
same
you make
level.
it in the GitHub editor?
Yes.
Mm.
I'm getting nervous if I see markdown tables like this, then, you know.
IntelliJ has an option to re-indent this kind of stuff. But in the GitHub editor, I want to get out of there as soon as possible.
Do you think it's that bad? Just, I mean, but aren't you using IntelliJ to code?
Yeah.
So I can understand Banshee, he's a Vim user, so as soon as he sees a text box, he gets scared and runs away. So he needs a console.
It's okay. You can install Vim in the browser. It's fine.
No, yeah, true, true. But on the other hand, like, how do you feel about an extension which injects code into every single website that you ever visit?
No, I don't use that. I just copy and paste. Just copy it from that into Vim, use Vim to edit it, paste it back again. It's super efficient. No, it's fine. I just edit it directly in place. I did, yeah, I've added the prettier ignore because I really like when you just do it locally and you just auto save and it auto formats and it fixes all the table. But it's much harder to tell from the WG utils point of view that like that's just an addition and you've not like removed someone else or changed some details about them. And I only wanted additions to be auto merged. So yeah, turning off the formatting was the main advantage there.
Yeah, I always change Martin to also work at Chili Cream. So I always do
Wait, did I put chili cream in my?
that.
Made you look, I think he says.
Yeah.
All right, folks. I see four people on the agenda. I see four people on the call. So I think we are just refreshing.
Wait, where is the fourth one?
Wait.
Are we four on this call? I can only
I
see.
didn't include, I was like, well, there's four squares, but one of the squares is me. And one of them's the speaker. That's what it is. It's repeating one of the squares. I normally have it in gallery view. I'll put it in gallery view. There we go. That's much more obviously three people.
I
Um,
think I never was as confused about the conversation on Zoom. I mean, it's weird. If you put it in the speaker view. Oh, I see the problem.
then there's four squares, right? And I was like, so
Yeah.
there's four people. No, no,
Oh
three
no.
people. Man,
That-
speaker view is really confusing. I don't know why it keeps going back to that because I always put it into gallery view. Maybe I need to change the settings. Uh,
Let me ping Gerald. I think Gerald is the last one, right?
yes.
Yes.
I'm sure he won't mind if we kick off anyway, so I'll start doing that, and he can come in with the intro when the time suits. Um, Hello everyone, welcome to the April Golden Path Working Group meeting. Assuming I'm at the right one, which I think I am. Yes. By being here, we have agreed to the specification membership agreement, the participation guidelines, the contribution guide, and the code of conduct. And we're aware that the meetings are recorded, they're published to YouTube, and that we use large language models, AI summary tools on the transcripts to file notes for us, which is great. We'll probably also use those language models to generate the notes and not worry about taking notes ourselves. There is a link to a live notes document if we want to add additional specific notes. But it seems these days that that is very rarely used. Let's start with an introduction of attendees. We'll go through the order that they are in the agenda, starting with myself. Hello, everyone. I am Benji.
No Gerald yet, so I will skip. And hello, I'm Martin here from Apollo.
Hello, I'm Pascal from Chilikum.
Hi, welcome. So on today's agenda, we have that the Golden Path is now open to contributions. We have discussion of the structure, terminology, and detail, review of the currently proposed practices, and discussion around additional practices. I strongly suspect that the last three of those is just going to be a broadly open conversation between us. So take it where you want. Is there anything else in particular that you would like to talk about? If you have any particular things that you would like to oppose or that you would like to add, they would be great topics. No? Okay, fantastic. In which case, we will kick off well, first of all, with a quick reminder that there is grants available for key initiatives. So if anyone wants to work on things that we need, that is financial support available to help you do so. So the Golden Path is now available for contribution. Hooray! I built with the help of Codex an initial version of the Golden Path. I then spent a fair amount of time going through and editing it and making it so that the content was more accurate to how I see the Golden Path going. But it is just a first draft. It has not been approved by anyone else. It's like literally my own content at this point. So I strongly encourage people to send pull requests, send things that fix things, send things that expand things. Also, file issues. If you think that a particular practice that we've got in there, or a problem, or a solution is not the right one, shouldn't be in the Golden Path, should be in the Golden Path, let's file issues. Let's start discussing it. That's basically the aim for the next 6 months or so, I should think. That's it. No comments on that. So let's move on to discussion of.
Okay, you go first.
No, you go first. You go first.
I was going to say I would just remove the work in progress thing. Like I'm fine with it not being official. Like it's not a spec. It's a working document. It can evolve. I don't think it will ever be finished. So I'm fine if we remove the big warning. I think it's actually better to have people adopt this right now than just not adopting it. So the warning could scare some people. I would just remove it.
I mean, either way, like I don't think like even leaving it there would like what's the point? Why should I not get this information? Like the thing is about it's for server maintainers, right? Essentially, or library maintainers, server and clients. So like there's I think they will understand. So I would also say let's just remove it.
I'm okay with doing that. My main concern at the moment is that like it's A, far from complete. There's like a whole bunch more stuff that we'd want to recommend. And B, I'm not certain that we've really even got the right like starting values in there. So if we take a look at, for example, the operation cost controls,
I was looking at that. And that was where I was what I wanted to chime in, but I realized that this is the next step in the agenda. That
yeah, it is.
much the terminology in detail, so I wait.
So, for example, like actually, if we look at the depth limits solution, I prepared a table there with some values that I used on a personal project, GQL Check. It's actually an open source project that other people can use, and essentially, it's that project is for like validating trusted documents. So you can just validate the entire set against a whole bunch of rules that you can define for yourself. And this worked fine on one of my projects. On another one, like the depth limits were way too small. But of course, you can change that. Like the point of the golden path is to be the or at least as I'm currently proposing it, the point of the golden path is to be like the default experience that people get. And if by default they get like this operation isn't allowed because it's too deep and you need to either make it less deep or you need to change the values, the configuration to allow for deeper, that's fine. That's desired essentially. That said, anyone who wants to add like this kind of thing to their existing server is suddenly going to have like a whole bunch of operations that are no longer valid, potentially. And that's a big deal. So I know I think Andy from Atlassian, who works on the GraphQL Java, he sets them, he like has these configs, but he has like really high values for them. So they are present. You're recommended to set them lower, but like they're there for everyone. And that might be a better approach for people adopting it for existing schemas, but I still think that the golden path should focus on essentially new adoption. But yeah, it's an interesting problem. Go on.
I see. Initially, I was a bit reluctant to say you have a configuration section with suggested defaults. But if you say that these are really high in GraphQL Java, then I kind of agree, because then that would again run into problems, right? Yeah, I see with the completeness of the thing now. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so basically, I'd like us to get to a point where we like test some of these values against our various like projects, our various client projects, our own projects, whatever, and see what values we can get away with. But also, like, and just to move the discussion on to the next point, um, the depth limits. I personally don't think that depth of a GraphQL query itself is particularly problematic. I think it's list depth that's really the issue. Every layer of depth that you add to a GraphQL operation essentially adds like a linear cost, right? If it's not lists, then it could be each one of them's another step in the waterfall, essentially. But it doesn't like multiply up the response size. It just adds to it. But if you've got a list field in there, then suddenly that can multiply it up, and it can multiply it up by like hundreds, right? Or thousands even. So I think list depth is much, much more important than just general depth.
How do people feel about the research IBM has done? With do you know the IBM cost specification? It's like it's not simple by any means. Like it's a complicated thing, but I think it has very unique capabilities of actually being useful as a cost implementation, because it goes exactly into this, right? If there is a field cost, there is a so we have this enabled by default. We, for example, wouldn't enable, I think we have just depth limits as well. But I believe it's more query complexity limits, maybe, where this goes in. I don't know. But the thing is, if we mention, like, do something like IBM cost specification in the golden path, then the maintainers have a lot of work to do. On the other hand, it would be really nice if we would have something like this by default everywhere, right?
Yeah, so the topic at the moment is discussion of structure, terminology, and detail. And so let's talk about the structure for just a moment. So I've split this up into roles, practices, solutions, and problems. And the idea is that different implementers, so if you're implementing a GraphQL server, or if you're implementing a GraphQL client, or if you're implementing like a GraphQL code generator or whatever else, you choose which one of those fits you. And that's what we call your role. We used to call it profile, but we've renamed it to role. So that's your role. My role is a server developer for a first party server or something like that. And then here are the practices that we recommend. So one of the practices is like put limits on operations, right? And then it says you can do this through any number of these solutions. So the IBM cost spec would be one of the solutions, but it wouldn't necessarily itself be Golden Path. I mean, it would solve one of the practices that is on the Golden Path. So if you implement it, then that practice on the Golden Path is solved. But we are also not saying that you have to do the IBM spec in order to be Golden Path, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's my aim with like I do not want to limit innovation. And there's been a lot of innovation in this, and like IBM's one is a good surface of this. There's also been like a whole bunch of other like GraphQL Armor as well. GraphQL Shield I think was middleware rather than this, but yeah, there's a few things like this that implement also a whole bunch of like proxies that do it, middlewares and stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, go on.
I think this makes sense. I have a question to the rules though. Like to the roles though, because server makes sense. Client obviously also makes sense. Then I have for all three different questions. For tooling, I have questions for schema design and for application developers. So what's the reasoning behind tooling?
Great question. So if you build tooling that does, for example, code generation, and I'm not talking necessarily type generation here, but actual code generation, then it might make sense for your code generation to have optimized patterns for dealing with paginated queries, right, that use connections.
Yeah.
If you're generating the code that controls the network layer for a client, then it would make sense to generate that network layer so that it supports trusted documents. There's a number of these practices on the Golden Path that your tooling may be relevant to. And I think at the moment, tooling is like I don't know, like some of these things might be applicable to you. And it's meant to be for like stuff that might be. So for example, the N+1 problem is not relevant to tooling in general, right? It's relevant to your server or to your schema design. It's not relevant to just general tooling,
It's
potentially.
just it's just that
Martin's right.
not
Tooling is the else case. It's
in the query generation, right? Like to generate when you generate something which ends up being persistent operations and hashed with persistent operations and whatever, it's going to be for a specific client. It's not just like it's a client. I mean, it's fine. Like,
You have CodeGen for server as well. Some people do that.
right, fair enough.
You have all kind of tooling.
Yeah, okay.
It's
To be fair,
pass through.
one thing I don't know if it's in here, but what would be really, really good. Um, is it under versioning? No. Blah 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 blah. Versionless. Um, is it under trusted documents? The hash, the identification of an operation would be something which would be really nice if this is generalized in tooling.
Okay, so we do have a stand annoyingly because GitHub's having an outage at the moment where we can't browse through the pull requests. I can't pull it up, but we do have a specification for persisted documents that is hoping to go into the HTTP spec. So that does actually standardize how those hashes are generated.
Yeah, yeah,
And what
I know about this, but the thing is in tooling, if we just have trusted documents there, then it's about trusted documents. But it's more about document identification, right? For example, this is then also relevant for, let's say, tracing solutions and so on, where we have a cross a cross-tool identification for the same request, which I think is one of the most valuable things that we could have across all of the toolings.
Cute cat.
She's scared. I don't know. She heard, no, she didn't hear anything, but she agrees.
Um, yeah, I think this section could definitely do with work, and I 100% agree. And I really hope that you're going to submit some recommendations from the hotel work as well on identifying this. Also, things like the what is it, like X request ID as well, that you can send through from, so that you can essentially trace a request even before you know it's GraphQL, like all the way through the stack. Like having that kind of stuff, how we integrate that into GraphQL would be great as well, which I think you're probably already doing with Hotel.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have to care. It's not a graphical concern, I believe. So I think we could. That's telemetry stuff, the trace part and so on. The baggage and the stuff that should technically be handled by Hotel. But yeah, I will see how I can contribute to this.
But yeah, you're right. The tooling one is very like loose. The schema designer one I wasn't intending on doing originally. Like this was not part of the go on.
These two are weird. The schema designer and the application developer are weird because we like the case of the golden path was to be for server engineers. And suddenly we creep in best practices for schema design and application development. Like I'm, I've said this in the first Golden Path meeting. I'm all in making this a specification for everyone, not only server implementers. But then this would be, they would have to be first class citizens, right? We cannot just say there's also for schema designers and application developers a section. Or
Yeah, I agree with you. And this is, I mean, again, this comes down to structure and whether this is the right structure. So if let look at trusted documents, for example, right? As an example we're all familiar with. So from a schema design point of view, trusted documents is basically irrelevant, doesn't relate to schema design at all. From a server implementer point of view, it's really important. Like this is like your security model for protecting you against untrusted queries. And then you need to decide, how much do I trust my trusted documents? Do I still need additional like runtime validations or not? And that's like a decision that you can make on the server side. For someone implementing a server framework or a server library, like trusted documents should be the default. So you now need to make sure that that's exposed in a way. And now we need like a standard for how those things are like stored and referenced. And I think this is one of the key things that's missing from the Golden Path right now, is essentially an interchange format for trusted docs, which I already have like plans for, but I haven't written anything up yet, other than KJSON-L, the package, but like we'll worry about that another time. So there's that. From a tooling point of view, for like GraphQL code generator, you might want to say, oh, I use trusted documents. So what I need you to do is look at all the documents across my application and then turn them into two hashes. One for me to send, two, not hashes, two JSON objects, whatever. Here's one to send to the server that says, here's all the operations and their hashes, and one that gets sent to the client or gets bundled with the client, which says, when you see this operation name, this is the hash to send instead, which is typically like a really small lookup dictionary. So that's a thing there. For the person implementing the client, they need to be like, oh, okay, I need to feed this dictionary into the relevant place, and now I've got trusted documents. But for the application developer, the idea of what trusted documents do is important, because this might not be something you've come across before. Like if you're coming from REST or whatever, like now there's this whole new concept of like GraphQL is a bit like flexible, but now we're also saying you're only allowed certain ones. And how do I tie that into the build pipeline of my Android app or whatever? Like it's a whole new thing. So if we then have a web page that says this is what trusted documents is, we need to serve all of those audiences, right? We need to tell server app developers, here is how you implement your part of it. Client framework and libraries, here is how you implement your part of it. Code generation, here's how you form the hashes, here's how you do the interchange packet. And application developers, like here is what it even is and why you have it and how the other tools do most of it for you. So you've kind of got this one web page with like 4 different audiences. And I'm not sure that that's the way that it's currently set up, but I'm not 100% sure that's the right way. Go on.
If it, I sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Like, it's just that I think this is really, really good because the golden path, like I said this in the beginning, that when we create a work group and we write all this content up and whatever to then say it's for server implementers to do security by default, it's actually a waste of all the knowledge that's there. Because, I mean, honestly, like the server developers are how many? 7 active? No, I don't know. But it's a handful of servers which are actively maintained in each language, 1 or 2, right? Something like this. So it's not that many people. If we could also just invite them all by email and tell them that, hey, now we do pagination limits everywhere. So I think aggregating this into this website, having these different rules is really, really valuable. And I think if we do not have rules for the normal people which use GraphQL, then it would just be a waste because the content is there, the practices are there, the solutions are there. Like everyone could benefit from it. And it's such a strong name, the golden path, like how you should do GraphQL. I think it definitely should also have these roles in it. I think what we could do is we could say that there is essentially like when you open the website, 2 different routes that you can take. One as, hey, I'm a server. We cannot say server developer because everyone will click there. But you can say that I'm building a GraphQL server or I'm using a GraphQL server. And then from there, essentially or I'm building GraphQL tooling and I'm using GraphQL, whatever. And then from there, you again have a screen where you can navigate between I'm using a client, I'm building a client, I'm building a server, I'm building some other tooling. And on the other hand, you see that the schema designer, the application developer, the client developer, because for a client is similar, right? That they also have to care about certain things. They don't need to care about batching, but they should care about trusted documents. So that's a bit the thing. And I think it's very valuable to have this. I'm not sure if this aligns with your idea of what this should be in the end, but I'm very interested in seeing what you think.
I really like the way the things that you're saying. Like I generally agree, but nonetheless, let me be the devil's advocate or whatever. Let me say the other side of this argument. One of the aims of the Golden Path is that developers who get onboarded with GraphQL, that like start using GraphQL, shouldn't need to think about a vast majority of this stuff. It should be solved for them. If we give them depth limits out of the box, they shouldn't even need to think about depth limits until they hit one. And when they hit one, we should specify an error that then says, hey, you've hit a depth limit. Go here to read more about depth limits. They should have trusted documents out of the box. They should have like pagination, good pagination out of the box. They should have fragment collocation out of the box. Like that's when the client says, here's how you write your GraphQL stuff, it is written in terms of putting your thing next to it. There's no other, like they're not even maybe told how to do a root query. Like you try and hide that away as much as you can, whatever. I mean, you would need to be told, but whatever. Like as much as possible, that person should not need to know this stuff. So, or not until they need to. So my concern with like saying this is the golden path for application developers is it kind of like undermines that, and it says, hey, here's all this huge amount of recommended practices that we have and the reasons behind them and the technical implementation of them for a client, for a server, for tooling, for schema development and stuff. And I'm worried that people will be just like, no, GraphQL is too complex. But the whole point, like one of the key points of the golden path is to actually remove a huge amount of the complexity from GraphQL by just doing the most obvious things for you and letting you opt out if you know better.
Well, I agree that this is the ideal state, but we also know that this is not the case. And it would be very easy for someone to see if their server is, if they're, not their graphical server, I'm talking about a application developer. If the API that they build with one of the graphical servers out there is like following the golden path. Because even though that we now say that, it should support batch resolvers and whatever and so on, I think for someone which is generally invested into GraphQL, this page is gold. See what I did? Yeah. So I would argue that the defaults have to be there for everyone which just uses GraphQL and should be the defaults. On the other hand, someone which builds a graphical server and publishes it into production, I would still recommend to read this thing, at least one person in the team, so that they actually know what to do and what this means. So when someone tells them that GraphQL is inherently insecure because you have unlimited depth limits, that they can hold against it and say no, because there's depth limits, something like this. So I think for developers which generally care about building a graphical API, they should know the practices on this page. And it's actually a kind of a good Bible, right? To give them to say that, hey, if you want to know more, read this. So.
Yeah, I think I broadly agree with that. One of the things that we need to like keep in balance is there is graphql.org and graphql.org/learn, and these are like the key places where you should go to learn GraphQL. And we have done some expansion of those over the years. We've added like security and file uploads and a whole bunch of other like extra pages to detail things. I think that that is not the right place on there to do this complex specification stuff of exactly how different things should work. That graphql.org/learn is the right place to say, like, we recommend that you use trusted documents. Here's the broad concept of what they are. When you build your app, you make a hash for thing, you send the hash to the server along with the query, and then later you just send the hash and it looks it up by the hash and it executes that operation, and boom, that's it, great. And now you don't have to worry about arbitrary queries. And that's like enough for someone who's just going through the learn pages. So I think Golden Path would be a good place for like, oh, so you really want to know like the depths of what's going on here and why it's going on and all the extra detail. I think the Golden Path will link to the learn pages where relevant. And I think maybe in some places the learn pages will also be like, if you'd like to understand this in more detail, check out the article on the Golden Path so we can cross-link them. But I do think that we want to be like really sensible about which things are the right things to go where. And I think that the high level, like glossing over it, assuming that the defaults are in place, but like just mentioning them should be in the learn pages. And then the detail of why they exist, what the problems are, and how we fix them, and why we've chosen these values as the defaults, and what the different, like one of the things I really like about the concept behind this on the Golden Path is like, here are the names of the configuration parameters and what they mean. And now it doesn't matter whether you use like Graphast or Hot Chocolate or Yoga or Apollo Server or whatever. If they do depth limiting, then the parameter names are this, 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 and this. Maybe some of them are camel case and some of them are snake case and some of them are Pascal case, whatever. I'm sure yours will be Pascal case, right? But yeah, that way, like when people see that configuration option, they can just search for it, they can read about it, they can understand it, and then they can set whatever one is right for them.
I see. I see. I'm a bit, yeah. I just wonder like how much of this should be on the learn and how much shouldn't. Like people should read this. That's important, I would say. I'm just saying, like, if we just build this for being only for tooling and client developers, then it's like it's 50 people which benefit from it, which is fine. It makes it, these are the 50 people or the 100 people or the 200 people. I don't know how many tooling developers there are, but these are the ones which push the ecosystem into the right direction by honoring these rules. So it's important. It's important to have good content without having to tell each one how things work, right?
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing here, right? Between the audience of people who are new to GraphQL and the audience of people who write GraphQL servers and clients, their knowledge of what GraphQL is and like their concepts and even their knowledge of like terminology, like saying the word selection set or root operation type to someone who's new to GraphQL versus someone who's writing a GraphQL server or client is quite a different experience. So if we primarily only target the people who we want to implement the golden path, which is primarily the library framework tooling authors, then we can get away with much more concise and we can get this documentation out like a lot faster, right? Because broadly it already says the main things. Everyone already understands the main concept. We could probably be a bit more specific in some of the algorithms, but like yeah, we can write some like tight algorithms and be like, this is what you need to implement. Whereas if we're then targeting also like end users, then we don't want to be putting like validation algorithms in the page that they read. We want to be telling them like your library should do this for you. Here are the knobs that you should turn to make it fit your use case. So I think it is a concretely like different audience. And I do hear what you're saying. Like, let's not waste a lot of time writing really great content and then only giving it to 50 people. But I think that we're not going to be writing all our really great content here. We're going to be writing like the actual rules, the specific, like most GraphQL users won't read the spec, and that's fine. Um, we have a website for most users, and I think that's what we should still focus on. Um, but that can be like a guiding principle of this. Like, if this content is looking really valuable, like let's take it out of this page, put it on the learn page, and then link to it. I think the Golden Path is going to do a lot of linking. I think it's going to link to like gaps. I think it's going to link to the IBM cost specification, and a whole bunch of other different places. I don't think the Golden Path itself is going to host the vast majority of the actual specifications. I think it's going to link to specifications elsewhere and say this solution is over here, and here's the main like configuration settings for it.
Mm. Yeah, I'm still thinking. I like what's on here. What I haven't figured out yet is who's the best audience. Like I'm probably just biased as a maintainer, you know. I think all of this is very important for people to know, but probably a lot of it isn't. Like if I think about validation time, I'd say probably don't care.
Yeah, I mean, all of this stuff is important for your GraphQL solution to have, but is it all important for you to know it even exists? I mean, if we do the right settings, probably not, honestly, because it's the whole point is it's protecting you from a whole bunch of stuff. And you only need to know about it when that stuff starts causing you problems. When you write a query that is too deep, or when you're having, I don't know, latency issues and you think that a different execution plan than just doing everything batched makes sense. Like there's a whole bunch of like different reasons why you might want to stray away from the golden path. But the point of the golden path is to make it so that someone can start with GraphQL now without having to read huge reams of documentation. Like, let's focus the documentation on just the things that really matter to them right at the start. And they can then, they can learn this stuff later because the default behavior we give to them is the right behavior for most people.
Yeah, I understand.
That said, I'm not opposed to targeting end users with this as well. And I think probably long term we should, but I'm a bit worried that it took me a lot of time to go through and edit this content, even though it's like broadly produced by Codex to start with, to edit it down, to move pages around, to split concepts up, to like come up with sensible configuration parameter names, this kind of stuff, like for what we have already. And this isn't anywhere near what I would call complete yet, for even just for my target audience. It's going to be even more work to then go in and put more details about these things for end users. And many of these things are already documented in the Learn pages, like for end users. I would like to like trim down some of that content so that the learn path for GraphQL is smaller. And then it's like when you become an advanced user, here's your next set of things to learn about, maybe.
Yeah, I like you have the getting started with GraphQL, which is like 3 lessons, and then you have everything from data loaders to federation in the learn pages. Yeah, I'm wondering if it's probably the yeah, it probably has to be hosted like this. I'm thinking about having this just as an appendix to the spec or something, but it's not the right format for this at all. So I guess it makes sense. I guess it makes sense. I just assume that it most likely will not receive as much love as it deserves because there's like a handful of people which are very technical which will read it. So I would maybe argue that the bullet points that are here are probably already, in most cases, detailed enough for people to grasp what's up and what they have to do, right?
I hope they're at least useful. Yeah. Martin, you've got your hand up.
Uh, yeah, I was going through the page. I think I have a problem with problems. I don't like that it's so prominent in the web page. Like I go to the golden path, I don't want to see problems. I
Hard
just want
agree.
solutions.
When I first wrote this, like that was a design principle of this was that the problems page wouldn't be listed out, they wouldn't be enumerated. And I built it in that way originally. And then I wanted to like say what are the things that these things solve. And so I would link you to a problem, but then it's like the navigation on that became really weird because now you're on like an orphaned page, right? You don't have the sidebar anymore, at least in the way that Docusaurus does it, because now you're just on a page that says n+1 problem, and like there's no context of where you are, where you came from. And it felt really wrong from like a data hierarchy, like a navigation, like a user experience point of view. And this was, as much as anything, just a limitation on my point of like, I just wanted to get this stuff built with Docusaurus. And so I did in the end just add it as a section. But like, yeah, I 100% agree with you on that, Martin, and I would be happy hiding the problems part if we can make it so that it's still comfortable to browse to and to browse back from.
How much does it need to be factored? Like if n+1 problem is quoted in different pages, could we have some reusable component that is included in the pages directly? And then it collocates, it collocates the problem with the solution, like fragments.
Oh, okay. That's not what I thought you were proposing. So yes, yes, we can do that. All of this or it can be MDX. It's not currently MDX, it's just Markdown, but it can be MDX. So we can use it like React components and embed stuff. So I thought you were thinking more of a like popover style, like
Oh,
hover over a
Popova, yeah.
word. Rather than a page inclusion. But like either way, that's just semantics at the end of the day. My concern with the popover was going to be like sometimes there's more content here. One of the interesting things about the problems pages is that they show here is the solution that solves me, and here are like here are the practices that solve me, which I think is quite valuable. So it can be a navigation aid, like, oh, I've been sent here because of data loader, or I found data loader in the golden path. Oh, it's not recommended. It's solving this problem. Let's go to the problem. That problem is solved by data loader, but also by batch resolvers. Okay, let's find out what batch resolvers are. And that kind of like understanding navigation, Wikipedia style, I think makes a lot of sense to me. Some of the problem pages are bigger than others. Some of them are quite small. Yeah, most of these are quite small, just a few bullets. But some are probably going to end up being larger. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to it. Like, see what you can make with it. See what makes sense and what feels right.
Yep.
Ideally, we would want to be able to hyperlink to them, right? Though, so we want to say like, hey guys, or like you come into a new project and you're like, your project is suffering from the n+1 problem. Here's details about the n+1 problem, and that also links to a bunch of solutions to it. Which one would you like to do? I quite like that as a like. I think they should be URL reachable.
Maybe we just hide them from the left bar for starters.
Yeah. If you can make that work without making the like UX really confusing, like do it. I only didn't do it because like it just looked weird, so I just turned it back on in the sidebar, and I just wanted to get the content done. So I'm not saying it's hard or anything, I just didn't put the time in. So yeah, if you can make it like feel right, do it. Send it as a pull request. I'd love that. That was originally my goal, so 100% support that.
Makes sense.
We've got about 10 minutes left. We've mostly talked about the structure and the different roles. I did want to talk about some of the proposed practices. We have actually talked about one of those, so I'm happy with that. Have you spotted anything that either you disagree with, like you think this shouldn't be part of the golden path, or something like data loader, for example, that I've explicitly said I don't think should be part of the golden path that maybe you think should be? Or have you also spotted anything that you think is like key and missing? Because I know, for example, Pascal, that's going to be observability, which I 100% agree with. But are there any other like key missing topics that we need in here?
Is there something about nullability in there? Doesn't look like it, right?
No. In fact, the whole like server capabilities is touched on error isn't mentioned yet. And to be fair, the whole like schema designer part of this hasn't really been explored. But even that, I mean, when you say nullability here, you're not even talking about necessarily schema design, but also error handling on the client, right? So like, is it throw on error? Is it catch? Is it throw on fragment read? Yeah, like that is a key topic that we will want to put as part of the Golden Path. My plan for that was I want to at some point actually get around to implementing the GraphQL.js version of this properly, fully, and split because effectively I'm splitting up the pull request for the spec as well at the moment. So I want to get those built so that we can then point to them and say this is our recommended like approach. I also want to like understand better what the recommended approach should be because like like GraphQL toe makes sense if you're using like window.fetch and that's your GraphQL client, but it doesn't make sense if you're using Relay. Like Relay's got much better tools for handling errors, with throw and field error and so on. So those make a lot more sense, and I want to understand from people using like Urkel, GQL Tada, Apollo Client, or any of the clients in other, especially the clients in other languages like non-JavaScript, what should we be recommending there? Like what practices should we be recommending?
Yeah.
So yeah, would love input on that.
I think we need also to reach out to the implementer at some point. I think Pascal was saying that earlier. Like there are maybe 20 people in the world that need to implement a bunch of stuff. So at some point, we need to actively reach out.
Yeah, we will definitely need to do that, and we need to get those ties to be better anyway. There is a file in the TSC repo that you both should have access to, that we tried to use to start getting some like contacts set up for the various libraries, but it's not got very far, and we really need to spend some more time populating that so that we can reach out more easily. But I would like to make sure that we at least have like an RFC2 implementation of this in GraphQL.js as well, like merged into GraphQL.js, so that people can actually start playing with it before we say, hey, you should be doing this everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
once we know what we have, what the set is that everyone should implement, then we just need to set up a page where you see the compatibility of all of the libraries. Then it will be very quick for, like this is how you get server maintainers to do something. You know, you have to have their name, their library name, and a lot of red crosses next to it, and then suddenly they will start making sure that it's green ticks. You know.
Okay, I can add stuff to can I use .graphql.now? Definitely. Actually, it worked quite well for Hot Chocolate because I think you guys have implemented a couple of features. So you're the top of the leaderboard now.
We didn't know that we are on there, and then Michael sent me a screenshot where we were like at I don't know 47% or something like this because we have a few things disabled by default. We're like, no, 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 that's not how it is.
But seriously, you should do a flyer for Conf, like something to give people. Like all the maintainers of all these implementations will be at Conf. So something like tangible, golden pass. I don't know. Maybe it's a pin, but maybe it's a flyer. I think that would help spread the word. Flyer with bunch of like list of recommendations. And the little checkbox, like they can check it, they can put it next to their keyboard, and every time they look at their keyboard, they can see all the missing checkboxes.
I'm personally like, I'm not a big fan of what I like to call shame tables, but I do think that
But
we should be
they work,
encouraging like
Benji. They
they do
work.
work, yes. They work, but they also contribute to maintain a burnout. Um, I'd rather that the libraries themselves like basically say on their page, here are the parts of the Golden Path that we implement. Like for example, GraphQL JIT, for example, like was a neat alternative implementation of GraphQL in JavaScript that basically compiled the execution into a dynamically evaluated function so that it could bypass a whole bunch of the more expensive parts of the algorithm. But it explicitly said we support this specific version of GraphQL, of the GraphQL spec, and we don't support like these two directives or whatever. And that's fine. Like, I don't think a library like that should be like, don't use this because it's got like 100 red crosses. Like, it's an okay, it's an okay trade-off to have. Um, but yeah, they are effective. So yeah, just make sure
Honestly,
that it's
honestly,
easy for people to fix when they're
honestly,
misrepresented.
honestly, maybe there's even another point. Maybe it's the blame tables are actually something we need because it would show you which servers do like there could be three things. There could be red, which means does not support. There could be yellow, like does support but doesn't have defaults. And there could be green, which has it on by default, and so on. Because for me as a server, as an application developer, I can then go and say, I use async GraphQL, and oh, I need to really make sure that I have this, and this enabled. And then I can enable it. It's something for the actual greater community than to say that, hey, I can go there and I can make my server secure. Because the thing is that, yes, ideally all the servers implemented, but I think even if this is final, there will be only a handful of servers which have all of the defaults set correctly by default, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of servers out there which are somewhat maintained, right?
Yeah, I think we should also like consider having like a staging time as well, where like when a new feature is added to the Golden Path, it's not like everyone gets an X until you implement it. Like giving like a window where you've got like, 3, 6 months to implement it, I think is quite good.
But
Also, like keeping in mind with the practices that there are multiple ways of solving it, actually telling people which of the solutions you implement is quite valuable. Like, oh, let's say hot chocolate does implement the complexity limits. It does it through the IBM cost spec. But GraphFast maybe implements the cost limits, but it does it through depth limits or whatever, and so on. And you can also like list multiple if you support multiple of those paths. But like you should say which one's on by default. Maybe multiple of them are on by default. I think there's value in that for helping people choose between libraries as well.
then let me phrase it differently. Then let's not make it red, yellow, and green. Let's make the street light different and have something, but I don't know, gray, blue, or a golden star or whatever. So that it's not that the server maintainer did something wrong. It's more compatibility with this specific golden path thingy. Because honestly, like if we add something to the golden path and the TSC and community, which is involved in this whole working group, decide that, hey, it makes sense that every server should add this, then there's no 6 months leeway. Then it's like every server should have this. And it's not like you're bad because you haven't implemented it. It's more like you have to have, we should surface this to the user and say that, hey, um, actually these three servers they have it from day one because it's not going to be a new feature that it's going to exist somewhere, right? And the others, this is how you can configure it. So yeah, I don't think we should have any leeway there, especially when it's regarding to security.
So I disagree. And the main reason I disagree is because that might be a Semver major change, right? If you're changing like depth limits, for example, now you're just invalidating like a whole bunch of queries, and you don't want to do that in a patch or a minor release. So I think rate like saying it's available is one thing, but like saying it's enabled by default, I think it's okay for a library to say this will be the default behavior in, V16 or whatever the next version is. But yeah, we don't want to be forcing, like, JS fatigue is a thing. We don't want to be forcing GraphQL fatigue because every time we push out a new thing, all the libraries have to release a new major version because they want to have their little green check mark or golden star or whatever. Like, it is worth being cautious. Anyway, we need to end this call and hop on over to the GraphQL over HTTP working group. This has been a fantastic discussion. I would encourage you to send your pull request through anyway. And if you do have like thoughts on doing this kind of thing that you were describing, Pascal, like, let's mock it up. Let's see what it looks like and see what the trade-offs are and discuss them. Because I think that there's definitely value. I just think there's also there are risks. Awesome. All right. Thanks both. I'll see you probably in a moment if you're coming to the other one.
You.